Does it say there are any more coming?
Yes.
Why?
Because it's beginning of
they are.
So they've always been here.
Yeah,
So there are
it's
no new ones.
exactly, it's just a cycle.
Yeah, so all the minds that exist have always existed. They will never cease. Which is another reason to have compassion for everyone. We need them all. And they never go away. You know? So it's this, so this idea of grasping at this particular life and grasping at this body and grasping at this, oh, I don't want to give up being tender, all of this is meaningless when you put it in context of beginningless lives. And that can affect our choices. Like His Holiness says that he wouldn't consider ever killing anyone unless he was, and he says, and this is only a maybe, that he was the last person who knew Dharma. And then he might think his life was, worth saving over someone else's. But he never put someone else's life above his. Because there's a consequence to our actions. But we grasp onto this, this self, this experience, as if, it's the most important thing, not how we treat each other. And what Buddhism's trying to get us to understand is, no, it really matters. So you really want to think the big view.
So
Yeah.
he grasps onto the concept of the Dharma as being above.
No, we grasp onto,
He did.
he takes refuge in the idea that the teachings can liberate us from suffering.
So
But we
he was the
need a
last
teacher.
one, and we would need a teacher that would go above somebody else's being more important.
Because that person will have another life. But if the Dharma disappears, then all the beings that are existing in that place at that time won't have access to it. That's the idea behind it. Whether he would do that or not is another story. But that's just to emphasize that, of how we think about our choices. We tend to think in terms of our self-interest at the moment. And our self-interest plus our loved one's self-interest. And that's about the extent of it. Doesn't, and we want to learn how to be, more spacious than that. That's what's challenging. Because once we learn, though, how interdependent we are and how interconnected we are, then we start to realize that everybody that has a mind at some point was our mother, was at some point our partner, was at some point our precious child.
So that's why sometimes you feel very connected with somebody that is not blood related. Like I have a friend, and we call each other sisters because I think in past life, because we're so connected.
No, yes, the
Does
Buddha
that
would say
make-
that's just a karmic connection. It's a positive karmic connection,
Yeah.
probably from recent past lives. You also could have been, and most likely were enemies in some lives. It
Right.
just wasn't recently.
So
We
you're
also have,
connected.
the people that you have that you instant dislike for, that's, probably a recent enemy. If you have a phobia of sentient beings, it's said that it's possible you were killed by that in a previous, in a recent previous life.
Someone killed you, so produced fear of people in general?
No, like if you're afraid of,
Water.
yes,
Oh,
that could be that you would drown. But if you're afraid of snakes, it may mean that you were a mouse in the previous life. And so, you practice the fear of snakes, because in that life, the fear of snakes was reasonable, because you
Right.
were their food,
Right.
So it's, but we don't have to get bogged down in all that. It's really just about understanding, because we can't change our past. We can purify, and that's one of the things that's taught in it comes up with just about every class. we can keep trying to, increase our circle of concern so that our ability to feel compassion with wisdom, we always don't want to forget that compassion and love are free of, our clingy attachment and aversion. So it's not, compassion just means for someone to be free of suffering. It doesn't mean, first of all, it doesn't mean that you're going to do something about it. Bodhicitta does mean you plan to do something about it. Bodhicitta includes that great compassion and that great love for all sentient beings with the highest intention that you will help them be liberated. So it goes beyond just this wish. It's also a commitment to being, one who will help. So, but compassion, so if we know that someone's behavior is harming themselves, we know it harms them. It's not like we let them do whatever they want because that's what, they think they're happy doing it. We have to have wisdom, compassion. So just like you don't let a child sit there and eat the whole box of cookies because that will make them sick. So even though they're having a great time, I ate a whole jar of Flintstones vitamins.
Oh, yeah.
It tastes good.
Yeah, my dad thought that was really stupid of the vitamin companies. So medicine should never taste good. So anyway,
You were healthy.
yeah, but so this is why we stop someone from doing that. When we have the authority to do so, and parents have that kind of, that kind of responsibility for someone else. So this is a process. This is why it's called a graduated path. It's a process, and it's not like, okay, now I've got, I've really got a realization of impermanence, so now I can concentrate on, the karma, and then, now I really got karma, so now I'm just gonna, not do anything negative, and it's not like that. So this is one of the teachings is that we should read a short glance meditation on all the points of the path every day, so that we don't forget the whole picture. And then we just focus on whatever we're focusing on at that time. So like if you just took establishing a daily practice, that was part of the instruction. Trying every day to read Foundation of All Good Quality. So,
But isn't it true, like for example, focusing on abandonment of non-virtues, which is basically the base of ethics, is necessary for...
That's why the beginning is necessary throughout, why the middle is necessary for everyone, and why the great path is, that you cannot become enlightened without all of this. So the beginner capacity is foundational. If you want a good rebirth, if you want to get liberated, if you want to become a Buddha, you must abandon non-virtue and adopt virtue. So you must understand what that means. What is that? So there, so when you get to this, you start talking about the 10 non-virtues. And what does that mean? And are they identical to the 10 Commandments? Somebody who's Christian.
Similar, very, very
They're
similar.
very similar.
Close.
Yeah.
They're very similar.
Just basic, like a different saying, potato.
Yes. I don't think there's an obey your parents in Buddhism,
No.
No.
but they are considered a field of merit, so that not treating your parents well is considered not a smart idea. You can accumulate a lot of merit by taking good care of your parents. Repaying their kindness is the idea. Okay. So the main activity for a beginner is, to abandon non-virtue and to adopt virtue. Why?
It's good for you.
Why? Why is that their main activity?
Because they're trying to achieve the conditions for a better or a happy rebirth,
And so what does that tell us about non-virtues and virtues?
that they contribute to your future.
They are the cause. So, and guess what? This isn't rocket science. Non-virtues lead to suffering. Virtues lead to happiness. But understanding the nuances within this is important. That it's really understanding, first of all, how the basis for our non-virtues is ignorance. And understanding how this grasping at a self and grasping at me versus you, and self versus other, and mine versus yours, that all that dualistic view of everything, how that plays into our, greed, our attachment, our anger, our aversion, our what we consider friends and enemies. Really starting to understand that our actions are driven by self-interest. We want to help our friends because friends are people who help us. They may help us, like literally help us. They may help us in that we enjoy their company. So it's about understanding that we really try to set things up as if we're the center of the universe. And then once we fall in love and once we have children, then we have a slightly bigger center of the universe. But only slightly, because we change our view of even those we love in the moment if things aren't going our way. So we may love our children, but still not like them much if they're acting out in the grocery store.
Right.
We may love our partner, but only if they treat us in a certain way and that they're not happy with someone else, especially at the same time. So, we have rules. We have,
It's ridiculous.
and that's attachment to who? Us. To getting what we want. So that contaminates our love and our compassion. If we have trouble being compassionate towards someone who's done things that we disapprove of, hate, whatever word you want to use. So, and that's the kind of thing a bodhisattva abandons. Because you cannot want to become enlightened for the benefit of all sentient beings if you still have that attitude.
Right.
So that's something you have to abandon. So, yeah.
How would it be for someone to deal with their parents with compassion if their parents has caused them a lot of suffering?
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things, is understanding that the suffering that you've experienced through the condition of your parents is something that you created the cause for. That it's not separate from you.
That you created the cause?
Yeah. Just not in this life. Obviously, babies haven't done much yet, Right. Yeah. This is why remembering beginningless lives is so important. So, and this is hard, because it's not about blame. It's not about blame. Because we can't do anything about the past, it's just sort of like we want to understand cause and effect so that we can quit repeating these patterns. So, in very simple terms, which sounds very callous and not compassionate at all, but just to make it simple, you know, if you're born into an abusive family, you probably were abusive in some previous life towards your family. And it's just circling. You know, you've created the cause to experience. This is why karma becomes really important to study. So when we get to karma, we'll talk about the consequences of our actions, you know, that they're definite, that non-virtues lead to suffering, virtues lead to happiness, that they don't go to waste. You know, once you've done an action, you will experience the result unless you purify a negativity or you destroy the seeds of virtue through anger. You know, so there are methods to, you know, before they ripen, to try to not have the experiences you created the cause for. Because since we've been around since beginningless lives, we've had time to do it all. We've had time to do it all wrong. We've had time to cultivate our good qualities. We just have not freed ourselves from samsara. So we've done, developed calm abiding, we've done all sorts of things that, if we were on, had enough direction, would result in us getting out of this mess, but not yet. So, yeah.
So if you were raised with parents that don't love you, that's because your past life you didn't love them and
You didn't love your children.
Ah,
That's horrible.
okay.
It's fair, though, which really irritates me. I really liked having
That's
this
horrible.
excuse of it being not fair. Why?
Because right now, I love my kids.
Well, that's
No
great. So
end.
you will have that experience again.
But my mom is not the best person.
Yeah, it is not instant.
Right.
Okay.
And it doesn't mean we have to respond. This is why every moment's an opportunity to change the future.
Right.
And so since there's time, like you don't just swap roles between your parents and child in the very next life, obviously,
Right.
I'd be having trouble because my mom died when I was 27, so she can't, it's like, sorry mom, you can't be my child in this life, but, so there's time, there's a gap between our actions and the results, So in that time, you may have developed all sorts of, that now you no longer respond to that behavior with anger or resentment or lack of understanding, no compassion, whatever. And so in this life, you have responded that way, or you at least responded, I'm not treating my kids this way, and you followed through, So, there's all of it, it just depends on the conditions for your seeds to ripen. But but our parents, that's a strong karmic relationship, clearly, particularly with our mom. We come out of her body. But even with our dads, we share, we have that DNA thing, it's like we are literally part of our body was theirs,
Right.
So that's a pretty strong connection. Yes. I'm having quite a time today. Thank you. Sorry, Anthony.
So like your ancestors too, right? Like you're a part of all of that.
Well, not necessarily.
Okay.
Our genetics are, yes. So we do care, we have that connection there. But since we don't meet our grandparents, necessarily our great-grandparents, a great-great-great-parent, in this life, we don't necessarily have a strong karmic connection with them.
Right.
So, yeah.
But you said that it's fair, so I'm wondering, I thought that karma was not about any kind of justice the way we understand it.
It's not. So that's why it's not relevant, because it's just like blame or whatever. But to
Right.
me, it's sort of like, I can't really claim that it's not fair, because it actually is just the result of me treating someone that way.
But according to Buddhism, it's a natural law, is that correct?
Depends on what you mean by natural. Because natural,
There's no sense of,
there's no judger.
there's no sense of justice
There's no
inherently in it.
judger.
Right.
It is literally just what the Buddha learned was the cause and effect.
Right.
So
That's
if
all.
they just, well, it's just this knowledge that a person born into a family of an abuser abused someone in the past. That's called, the result that is similar to the cause. And then you have the result that's the experience, that's similar to the experience of the cause. And then there's so you have the habit of being an abuser, okay, if it's a recent history. And then you have the result, which is similar to the experience, so you are abused. Then you have the environmental result, so perhaps you're, and you can't get help, perhaps. So it's all of those things. It is not that there's a creator or an enlightened, powerful being up there that goes, oh, you're going to get yours.
It's not a punishment.
Right, it's not a punishment. It just literally cause and effect, like planting an apple seed and putting all the conditions in place and getting an apple tree. And you'll never get a mango tree because they're not congruent. So cause and effect are congruent. They match. Now, if we respond to, this is why remembering that you're part of the experience, that we can't, that, one of the 4 elements of karma is that you cannot experience a result that you did not create the cause for. So there's no random experience. There's no bad luck with experience. It's just simply that you created the cause for it. Here, guess what? It's ripened. Yes, Nick?
So I mean, this could be like far-fetched, I don't know, but don't you kind of like recycle, like, like she's saying, like I feel like a lot of times, like I've known people,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, suddenly it started happening and then kind of like seemed very real to me. So anyway, but I can't prove any of that stuff, right, anyway, but.
Yeah, but you can someday. I mean, the teachings say that if you develop your concentration and you reach certain levels of accomplishment, you will start to remember your past lives. Now, you might not remember the past lives that are the cause for this, what you're experiencing in this life. That's probably also caused. Sort of like, oh yeah. But it isn't that it's a system of justice. It isn't that. It is simply cause and effect. That's why it's not about blame. It's about learning what that is so that we can interrupt it. Because we're mistaken about it. We really do think it's kind of random and, and luck is quite a bit involved, And sometimes we think that there's a punisher, depending on the culture you're in. So and that's not what the Buddha taught. The Buddha taught just based on what he learned through his achievements, which were, removing ignorance, having the direct experience of how things actually exist and how they come. This is all about how our actions, impact everything. I mean, it's just, it's like we know that apple seeds can only be apple trees. We also know that apple seeds aren't enough to have an apple tree. You need other stuff. And that's true of everything. If not all the causes and conditions are there, it will not arise. That's what dependent arising means, that all the causes and conditions have to be there. And we're just one of them. So we happen to meet the conditions in this life for certain things to ripen. So we have we'll get to it in karma. If I start there, we'll never.
But the good thing is that we're getting closer to that positive space because, let's say, at this moment, at this life, I love my kids and I treat them well. So
Yeah.
I'm closer
Well, no, you're not
Or-
closer
or
to
just-
anything, but you've cultivated that quality, so that may mean that you are less likely to have the other condition. You know, but we can also meet really lousy conditions, like, and we'll get there. Okay, so then because we have a whole course on death and rebirth because it's involved, and then there's lots of discussion with karma because we want it to be different. So, except that it gives us all the power. You know, it just says if you just learn what are the causes of your suffering, you can stop them. It's just that it's not like this, you know, and you have to have effort and be really motivated. So you know, so like you have to have a fear of your negative actions, you know, that, oh, they really will come back to haunt you. So you might want to consider not doing that, you know. So, you know, sometimes that's, you know, that's what you have to do. It's like watching, you know, a child, you know, really refrain from, you know, taking their toy back. So it's that kind of effort, you know, with a lot of our strong habits. So we, you know, it's that kind of process. So so what do we need for that?
Diligence.
Diligence, and what allows the diligence? It's my favorite word.
Control,
No,
no, persistence.
Patience.
patience.
Discipline.
Patience.
Okay.
We have to be patient with ourselves, and we have to be patient with others.
Right.
Because, you know, so this is, you know, so when learning even about, you know, like states of mind, like, you know, this is why the first course, you know, the next course will be Mind and Its Potential. Because understanding the mind is really critical to all of this. And so understanding what the jargon is. So for patience, you know, much to my chagrin, patience is accepting the suffering that arises in your mind and not retaliating. You know, that's, you know, not what I wanted it to be. I wanted it to be having no suffering arise. But it's not. So, you know, so it's really understanding what attitudes we have to cultivate for our mind, because it's all about the mind. So if patience is driving our mind instead of anger, very different outcomes happen. So why would a beginner need refuge? For those of you who, this is the last, towards the end of their, shall I stare at you? It's so unfair.
You need faith that what you're studying is going to help you and help you to help other sentient beings.
Yeah, and even in the beginning, when all you want is a good rebirth, you have to have confidence in the teachings. Otherwise, you won't put them into practice. You know, so it's.
So maybe faith was not the right word, but
No, faith and fear and faith are the cause for refuge. Fear of the lower realms, fear of unhappy rebirths, you know, and confidence, the faith of conviction. And of course, the faith of conviction is very small in the beginning. If you're a brand new student, you know, maybe you never met the Dharma in previous lives, which they kind of say you kind of have to. So I don't get that. The chicken and egg thing is really sometimes quite difficult. But you know, you would not have a lot of faith of conviction, which means you've experimented, you've seen cause and effect. You know, you really, you have a great deal of confidence in the teachings. It's not blind faith, where you're just taking someone's word for it. But so some things like karma, since we can't see we can't remember our past lives, we can't see the things that connect all these dots. You know, you just have to, you know, it's kind of an open question until you can start to remember your past lives. So it's sort of like all you can say is, well, you know, the physical universe is like that, so maybe it's possible that, you know, that consciousness has an impact on cause and effect, or has an effect. Yeah.
When you start remembering those things, what would be a clue that you're not dreaming?
because it's a state of concentration. It's not a,
Like during meditation.
Is,
you reach a level of, it's what's called a siddhi.
See.
Yes, a siddhi, an accomplishment. So you have to develop levels of concentration. People who remember their past lives as children, they say children often can remember their recent past lives, but that depending on their culture, they're either told that, quit telling stories, or,
well, they
you know,
say they're connected until 5 years old with like their spiritual, side. So they can talk
That's
to
habit
dead
energy.
people and things like
Yeah.
that.
and that's habit energy, so we bring our habits with us. And so sometimes people will bring, because they have achieved clairvoyance in a previous life, they're more likely to remember their past life. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, apparently when he was little, used to crawl up to the Laudo cave near his home, which was, he was recognized as the reincarnation of the Laudo Lama who did lots of meditation in this cave. And even as an infant, he would try to get up, that's my cave.
That's so cool.
It is so cool. It really is cool. Do I have any belief in that? I don't have that experience. So, it's sort of like, okay, and I keep the door open. So, and to me, karma makes sense. The whole physical universe operates on karma. Why wouldn't our consciousness have effects? I really don't have any trouble with that. And that is really dependent on past and future lives, because it's not instant. So I figure as long as it motivates me to be a better person and do better actions and think more positively, there's no harm anyway.
Right.
I'm a baby in this. Baby steps. So, but of course, the longer I practice, the more I'm confident in the teachings, because I see change and I see, I just look at things from a different perspective. So, there's just more to support the teachings from my viewpoint. Okay. So once you decided you really would like it to be out, or just considering if there's a way out, maybe I'll get on that train. Then you're going to be really looking at how we stay stuck, how do you get out, and a lot of that is about, really letting go of the pleasures of samsara. They say that this experience that we're having is part of the desire realm. And if you look at my mind, you get that. It's just, because that's what it reflects. The desire realm is reflecting our mind. The hell realms are reflecting that, the mind of, that's ripened, for people who are in the hell realms. So it's Hungry Ghost, same thing. All the realms, these names aren't, they don't use complicated speech around any of this, It's like the definition of form is suitable to be form. Tells you a lot, so desire realm is just describing the beings that are in it. So, we're in the desire realm, and we're driven by craving. We really think that meeting our cravings, is what's going to make us happy. And it actually drives us to suffering. Yes. Because we'll do unbelievable things to meet our cravings. So, we cheat, we steal. Yeah.
If you get to a point, in this cycle, right, and we know there's rebirths and things like that, people believe that. So, does it come to a point where you're just like, all right, I'm done here?
Like literally done, or your mind has said, I've had enough.
I mean, you can't trust your mind, right? But I'm just saying, like, does it come to a point where you're to get into another? I mean, I don't know.
Well,
I'm asking.
nirvana, okay, so yeah, but these are
I have
all
no
levels of mind.
Right.
So the level of mind that is nirvana is a mind that no longer has any disturbing emotions.
Okay.
And that's because ignorance has ceased.
Right.
Because now you have the wisdom that knows how things exist. And that apparently changes everything. So no longer can this self-grasping, greedy, all the things that drive our self-interest, there's just no self-interest anymore. You realize that that's just a story, that's what's making samsara manifest. So it's not a place, it's a state of mind.
State of
So
mind.
what do you do after nirvana? You're like,
You help others get there.
right.
I mean, wisdom will come.
Right.
But it's just peace. You no longer have any worries, fears, need. There's no craving. You just have bliss.
Is that like being brainwashed?
Yes. Did you say brainwashed? In the sense that it's just mind training. And it's a matter of what we want to replace our ignorance with is wisdom, with direct knowledge of how things exist. Because it's not even just a concept. First you have a strong concept that things exist differently than they appear to, and then you finally develop an unshakable conviction of that, and then that mind is powerful enough to have an actual experience of how things exist. You have an experience of emptiness. And then, then you know the rope's not a snake. Right? And it's irreversible. So what I try to do is, in those, like if you ever wake up really late at night and you can't get right back to sleep, that's a really nice time to experience this quiet. You can't do anything, it's not like your to-do list really can be done at 3 a.m., so you just kind of enjoy the no